One evening, deep in the forest, on a camping trip, we lit a fire. The kind of fire that crackles slow and casts shadows that seem to breathe. Night came early, clouds swallowed the moon, and the air smelled of pine and smoke. We were just a group of friends, 6 of us, tired of city noise, looking to escape for a few days. And like it always happens around Firelight, someone suggested we share scary stories. Each of us would tell one story every hour until dawn. 12 in total, all of them about the forest. We thought it was just for fun, something to spook each other before crawling into our tents. We didn't know what we were inviting, because as the stories began, the fire dimmed just a little. The forest grew quieter than before, as if something out there was listening. True or not didn't matter. Each tale had to be convincing enough to make you glance over your shoulder, and maybe, just maybe, one of them would be real. We didn't think we'd make it to the 12th, and none of us were prepared for what happened after it. It all started with the fire, the cold beer, and the first voice breaking the silence. Nick leaned forward, poking the fire with a stick. My granddad used to say, if you hear someone whistling in the woods and you don't see who it is, you don't whistle back, you don't speak, you don't even breathe loud, you just wait. We chuckled, but there was something in his tone that kept us quiet. I didn't believe him, Nick went on, until 2 summers ago. I went backpacking alone, Oregon wilderness. I picked a spot miles from the nearest ranger station. Thought I was being brave, off the grid, real adventurer type. The fire popped, and Nick's eyes caught the light. I was laying in my tent that first night listening to the crickets when they just stopped. No frogs, no wind, just silence. Then I heard it. A whistle, real slow. A tune I didn't know. Faint, but it wasn't far. Too clear. He looked around at us. So, I unzipped the tent, stepped out, full moon, good visibility, but there was nothing out there, just forest, still as glass. Then it whistled again. From behind me, this time, same tune. I spun around. Nothing. But it kept going. Around and around the campsite, like it was circling me, but I never saw it, not even once. Nick's voice dropped low. I didn't sleep, just sat in the tent, blade in hand, heart pounding. When the sun rose, the whistling stopped. But when I stepped outside, there were no prints, no broken twigs, just mine. He paused, staring into the fire, and here's the part that still messes me up. When I packed my stuff, I found something in the dirt, right where I'd been standing the night before. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small rusted harmonica. It was still warm. Sarah tucked her hair behind one ear, the firelight dancing in her eyes. This one's from my childhood. My parents have a cabin in Michigan. It's been in the family for generations. There's a narrow trail that cuts into a birch grove about a half-mile behind the house. I used to wander it alone when I was 8 or 9. Never thought twice about it. It was peaceful, safe. She paused, chewing her lip. Until the first time I saw her, a girl, standing between 2 birch trees, pale skin, white dress, long blonde hair. At first, I thought it was just another kid, but she didn't move. She just stood there, watching me. The wind rustled the trees around us. Someone shifted in their seat. I waved. She didn't wave back. Her face, it was wrong. Like a porcelain doll, too smooth, too still. Sarah leaned forward. I ran back to the cabin, told my dad. He went out with his shotgun. Came back 20 minutes later and said, "There's no one out there." But that night I found 2 handprints on the window of my room. She held her hands up, long fingers, thin palms. But here's the thing, they were high, way higher than any kid could reach. We sat in silence as she leaned back. She followed me, after that. Every time I walked that trail, she was there, closer. One step nearer every time, until I stopped going, until we sold the place. Sarah looked up, her voice barely above a whisper. But sometimes when I'm near trees like that, I swear I see a white dress between the trunks. James was quiet for a moment before he spoke. He stared down at the fire, as if searching for the right memory. This one happened in Yellowstone, back in college. I was out there with my cousin, hiking off one of the less-used trails. We thought we'd find some peace, maybe take photos, spot some wildlife. What we found instead, he paused, then continued. We came into this clearing, perfect circle, no animals, no sound. And in the middle of it, this tree, a huge pine, but it was upside down, literally. Its roots were in the air, branches buried in the dirt, like something had pulled it up and jammed it back into the earth wrong. We raised our eyebrows. James nodded slowly. We thought it was some kind of prank or art project, but it didn't feel right. Around the tree were others, not flipped, but bent, pulled backward, their bark stripped in claw-like patterns. Then we noticed something tangled in the roots. He took a slow breath. A pair of shoes, caked in old, dried mud, and an old camera. It was nailed to the trunk, upside down too. We took it down, dusted it off. It still had film. The group leaned in. When we got home, we had it developed. Most were just blurry forest shots, but one was a face, buried, pressed into soil, eyes wide open, mouth full of dirt. He looked at us, dead serious. I've never gone back, but sometimes I wonder if the photo was taken before or after they were buried. Lena cleared her throat, twisting the ring on her finger. So, a few years back, I was hiking in the Allegheny Mountains with some friends. We were all split up for a bit, just doing our own thing. I got a little ahead, took a wrong turn, and ended up alone. Not worried. I had a good sense of direction. Or so I thought. She picked up a stick and started drawing little shapes in the dirt. It was quiet, way too quiet. No birds, no insects. Just this heavy silence that made your ears ring. I figured I should head back to the main trail, but I didn't see the markers. So, like an idiot, I called out, "Hello? Anyone there?" She paused, and something answered me. Everyone around the fire went still. "It wasn't an echo," she said. "It was a voice. Deep, slow. Right beside me, it said, 'Yes.'" She looked up, her voice thin. I swear it wasn't in my head. I turned around so fast I nearly tripped, but there was nothing. No one. The forest behind me was just trees, shadows, but I could feel something watching me, breathing even. Lena hugged her arms. I ran. Didn't stop for 20 minutes. Got back to camp shaking. When I told the ranger the next day, he didn't ask if I was sure. He just asked where. When I pointed at the map, he nodded. Then she whispered, he said, "We don't go there after dusk." The fire had burned low. No one spoke for a while. The silence hung between us, heavier now, almost physical. Even the trees seemed closer than before, as if they'd shifted in the dark. The embers pulsed faintly like a heartbeat, and then finally dimmed to black. James stood and tossed in a log, then another. The fire flared back to life with a loud crack, lighting our faces again. Someone coughed. Another took a swig of beer, hand visibly shaking. We weren't laughing anymore. Aaron leaned forward, his face half lit by the rising flames. "This happened to me in Colorado a few years ago," Aaron began. "It was supposed to be a peaceful solo hike. I took a ridge trail outside of Gunnison, nothing too wild, just high elevation and big views. But around midday, the weather shifted, fast. He took a breath. Fog rolled in. Not like morning mist or a low cloud, this was heavy, dense, like someone dumped wet concrete into the valley. Within 5 minutes, I couldn't see more than a few feet in any direction. His voice lowered. I stopped walking and just listened, but it was dead silent, the kind of silence that feels wrong, like the world hit pause. I knew I had to stay put, but then I saw him. Aaron's hands flexed slightly. A figure, just barely visible. A man, walking through the fog with a heavy pack on his back. He wasn't stumbling, he had a purpose, moving slow, but like he knew the way. I shouted. No response. I tried to follow. He stared into the fire. I followed him for, I don't know, an hour, maybe more. I kept thinking, he knows the way. He can lead me out. But I never caught up. Every time I got closer, he just drifted further into the mist, like a shadow. Then I realized I was on the edge of a drop. He let that sit for a moment. I was standing on the very lip of a deep ravine. And the man, he was gone, no footsteps, no sound. I looked down and saw only my own prints leading right to where I stood. When the fog lifted hours later, I found my way back, eventually. He looked up, and for the first time that night, Aaron looked genuinely shaken. I mentioned it to a ranger the next day, just casually. He asked what ridge. I told him. He got quiet and said, "That trail's been closed for 5 years. Since a hiker fell. We never found his body, just his pack." I asked him what he looked like. Aaron paused. He described my shadow. "When I was in Scouts," Maya said, pulling her hoodie up, "we were taught something in survival class. Knock once for no, twice for yes. It was our way of signaling without shouting. Of course, we turned it into a prank. Kids knocking on each other's tents, scaring the younger ones." She glanced around the circle. "Last summer I went camping with my boyfriend. Deep woods, no service. We set up near a dry creek bed, real peaceful spot. The first night, just after midnight, we heard it. A single knock. Software. Not sharp like a woodpecker. Dull, almost hesitant. We figured it was an animal. But the knock came again, then again, always one knock. Always from a different direction." Her hands wrapped around her knees. It felt like something was walking a slow circle around our tent. Knock, wait, move, knock. We joked, maybe it wants to talk. That was our first mistake. Second night I waited, and when the knock came, I knocked back. 3 times. She took a breath. The response came immediately, 3 knocks, except they didn't echo. They came from beneath me. I was sitting on a hollow log by the fire. I felt the vibration. Something inside the log knocked back. I froze. My boyfriend thought I was messing with him. But then the log shifted, just slightly, like something was crawling inside it. We left. Packed up by flashlight. Didn't speak until we reached the car. My dad used to say, "If something knocks in the forest, don't answer unless you want to invite it in." She stared into the flames. I think I invited it. And I don't know if it ever left. Sean took a breath and rubbed his hands together like he was trying to warm something deeper than skin. "My uncle had a rule," he said. "He was a hunter, spent half his life in the forests of the Northwest. And he always told me, don't point your flashlight between closely growing pines after dark. If something's watching, you'll see it blink." He gave a dry laugh, but there was no humor in it. I thought it was a scare tactic, something to keep me alert until I tried it. Sean leaned forward. We were out during elk season. The sky had turned a deep, bruised purple. I stepped a few yards off the trail to piss, and I saw it, a tight cluster of pine trees, trunks so close they nearly touched, and I remembered what he said. So I pointed my light between them. He paused. At first, just darkness. Then two small yellow lights, like marbles. They blinked. I thought maybe it was an animal. A deer, maybe. But deer eyes don't move like that. They don't slide horizontally across a tree line without sound. He looked at each of us. It didn't drop or run. It slid from one tree to another, like it was floating. The light caught part of its face, and it wasn't human. At least, not anymore. I backed away, slowly, never dropped the light, and whatever it was, it didn't follow. Just kept watching, blinking, like it was learning. He sat back. I've never hunted since, and I never point my flashlight where it doesn't belong. I did a 3-day kayak trip once with a buddy, said Jordan, adjusting his seat like the memory itself was uncomfortable. We were up in Washington, dense forest, glacier-fed rivers, no towns for miles. The water was crystal clear. Day 1 was perfect. Just us, the current, and a map we barely looked at. He paused. On the second day, we found a fork in the river that wasn't on the map. It looked natural, narrow, winding, but clean. Fresh water, flowing fast. We figured it'd cut a few miles and link up again. It didn't. We paddled for 4 hours, then 6. Trees got taller. Sun disappeared behind clouds that didn't move. No sound, no birds, just the whisper of the water and the splash of our paddles. We tried to turn around. The current wouldn't let us. He leaned in. At dusk, we passed a riverbank with a fire pit, fresh embers, and a jacket, mine, folded and placed neatly on a log, but I hadn't taken it off. We kept moving. Night came, no stars. The river didn't widen or bend, just the same trees, same rocks. It was like we were looping, but never seeing the same thing twice. We saw a tent, then another, then a boat, just like ours, empty, spinning slowly in the current. Jordan's hands clenched. The third morning, the water was still moving, but we weren't. It was like time was passing, but space wasn't. Then we saw ourselves. He looked up, on the shore, standing, watching, exact clothes, same faces. We didn't wave, we didn't speak, and they didn't either. We closed our eyes, just kept paddling, and eventually we hit sunlight, the regular river, campground, civilization. He took a shaky breath. But sometimes, when I sleep, I dream I'm still in that bend, still paddling, still watching myself from the shore. Beth hadn't spoken much all night, but now she cleared her throat and looked up. I used to work as a field researcher in Alaska, mostly remote trails, solo hikes, trail cams. I was fine being alone. Never felt scared in the woods. She glanced at the fire. Until one trip. I was following a moose trail a few miles north of Denali, middle of nowhere. GPS barely held a signal. That day, it started to snow lightly, just a dusting. I came across a formation I couldn't explain. She shifted forward, elbows on her knees. It was a thicket, like a dome of branches woven together. Huge, 7 or 8 feet tall. It looked natural, but too perfect, like something built it. And inside? She shook her head. Bones, dozens of them. Small, snapped clean, some still had fur, and in the center something was curled up. I don't know what. I didn't get close, but it breathed. A log snapped loudly in the fire. I backed out slow, didn't run, hiked a different way out. That night I slept with a knife in my hand and a flare ready. Beth looked around the circle. 2 weeks later, I was back in Anchorage, packing to fly home. I looked out the window of my rental cabin and saw it. She stopped. Let it sit. The same nest, at the edge of the woods, not as big, but identical. Same dome, same weave, like it followed me, or maybe it nested closer this time. She leaned back. I didn't go outside, and I haven't been back to Alaska since. David sat quietly, staring into the fire like he was waiting for something to blink back. I used to go hiking with my dog, Milo, big golden retriever, never spooked by anything. Not storms, not coyotes, nothing. He rubbed his hands together slowly. One trip, we were in northern Georgia, old-growth forest. The trees were so thick the sunlight barely made it to the trail. We were maybe 10 miles in, hadn't seen anyone all day. Milo ran off, just bolted after something in the brush. David smiled faintly. That wasn't unusual. He'd chase rabbits and then circle back. But he didn't come back this time. He looked up. I called for him, shouted his name, again and again. It echoed, but it echoed wrong. It was like the forest caught my voice, stretched it, twisted it. I yelled, "Milo!" Then, without thinking, I yelled my own name. He paused. That's when the echo responded, but not with Milo's name, just mine. And it didn't come back right away. It waited. A pause, and then, David. But it wasn't my voice. It was slower, deeper, like someone enjoying the way it sounded. I stopped calling after that. I stood still for a long time. Eventually, Milo came back, tail between his legs, shaking. But he wouldn't come near me. Not for the rest of the day. He just stared. David's voice dropped low. And that night, while I slept, I swear I heard something walk the perimeter of my tent. It didn't speak. It didn't growl. It just circled, breathing, like it was waiting to be invited. I haven't been hiking since. Kat leaned forward, poking at a coal with a stick. This one's weird because I don't think I was supposed to find it. The trail, I mean. She glanced around the circle. A few years ago, I was hiking solo in northern Idaho. I'd taken the same route a dozen times before. Well marked, safe. But on this trip, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A narrow trail veering off the main one. It didn't look natural, though. It was arranged. Feather bundles tied with twine, little bones hung on branches like charms, but no footprints, no signs of recent use. She took a deep breath. I followed it. Of course I did. Curiosity or stupidity, maybe both. It twisted through the forest in ways that didn't make sense. Sometimes I'd swear I passed the same fallen tree twice, but I hadn't turned around. Hours passed, the air got colder, the trees thinner. I started feeling like I was being watched. Kat's voice dropped. Then I saw something nailed to a tree. A piece of leather, etched with strange marks, and beneath it, written in what looked like ash, was one word: leave. I turned around, but the path was gone. Not overgrown, just gone, like it never existed. I panicked, ran in what I hoped was the right direction. My GPS wouldn't load, my phone kept flickering, but then, after what felt like hours, I stumbled back onto the main trail. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. She looked into the fire. A month later, I went back, not to follow it, just to check if it was really there. Her voice was barely a whisper now. It wasn't. No feathers, no bones, nothing. But there was something else. Nailed to the same tree I remembered. She paused. A note, fresh, on clean white paper. It said, "We let you out once." Kat leaned forward, poking at a coal with a stick. This one's weird because I don't think I was supposed to find it. The trail, I mean. She glanced around the circle. A few years ago, I was hiking solo in northern Idaho. I'd taken the same route a dozen times before. Well marked, safe. But on this trip, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A narrow trail veering off the main one. It didn't look natural, though. It was arranged. Feather bundles tied with twine, little bones hung on branches like charms, but no footprints, no signs of recent use. She took a deep breath. I followed it. Of course I did. Curiosity or stupidity, maybe both. It twisted through the forest in ways that didn't make sense. Sometimes I'd swear I passed the same fallen tree twice, but I hadn't turned around. Hours passed, the air got colder, the trees thinner. I started feeling like I was being watched. Kat's voice dropped. Then I saw something nailed to a tree. A piece of leather, etched with strange marks, and beneath it, written in what looked like ash, was one word: leave. I turned around, but the path was gone. Not overgrown, just gone, like it never existed. I panicked, ran in what I hoped was the right direction. My GPS wouldn't load, my phone kept flickering, but then, after what felt like hours, I stumbled back onto the main trail. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. She looked into the fire. A month later, I went back, not to follow it, just to check if it was really there. Her voice was barely a whisper now. It wasn't. No feathers, no bones, nothing. But there was something else. Nailed to the same tree I remembered. She paused. A note, fresh, on clean white paper. It said, "We let you out once." It was my turn. Everyone looked at me, eyes shining with reflected flame, waiting. I hadn't planned on telling one, not really. But something about that moment, that circle of heat and dark and silence, pulled the words out of me. "This didn't happen to me," I said. "But it happened to someone I knew. His name was Rick. Grew up a couple towns over. We used to call him the night hiker. He loved being alone in the woods after sunset. Said it helped him think." I adjusted my seat. Anyway, one summer he started talking about this ridge trail near Cragstone Lake. Said there was something odd about it. He'd walk it every night for weeks, same spot. Said the view was better than anywhere else, except there was no ridge there. Not on any map. I checked. Still, he described it every time, said the trees were all dead up there, white bark, and always some kind of fog, even when the rest of the forest was clear. My voice lowered. Then he said he saw people. Not hikers, not campers, just figures, pale ones, standing between the trees, never moved, just watched, always watching. Said the weird part was they were all facing away from him. I glanced up at the fire. Last time I talked to Rick, he sounded different. Quiet, number. He said he'd tried to leave the ridge one night and realized it took longer to hike down than up. Like the trail was stretching. And those figures, they were turned around now. I looked at everyone. 2 days later, he was gone. Left his phone, wallet, keys, everything, on the hood of his truck. Parked at the Cragstone trailhead. Cops never found anything. But they let me look at his photos. I swallowed. Last one was a blurry picture taken just before sunset. A group of figures, backs turned, standing at the tree line. And one, just one, had started to turn its head. I leaned back, the fire cracking at my feet. And sometimes, when I'm deep in the woods alone, I swear I feel it, the moment, that shift, like I've stepped somewhere I shouldn't be, somewhere watching me back. And I know. I stared into the woods beyond the firelight. I don't dare look too long. No one spoke after the last story. The fire, once warm and crackling, now felt like a thin defense against something ancient pressing at the edge of the dark. Faces were pale, eyes avoided the woods. We didn't joke, didn't laugh. Just packed up slowly, almost automatically, like we'd all felt the shift. The wind had died. Even the trees were still. We kicked dirt onto the coals, watched steam rise from the last glowing embers. Someone whispered a good night, but it didn't feel like an end. Just a pause. We hiked back in silence. No phones, no flashlights unless necessary. Like we might draw attention if we glowed too brightly. When we reached the cars, we hesitated. Looked back. And there, in the clearing where we'd sat, where the stories had been told, the fire was burning again. Full flame, no smoke, no wind, just a steady, unnatural blaze in the center of the empty woods. We didn't speak, we drove away, and none of us have ever gone back.